I'm Michael Bain, and welcome to Triggered, brought to you by Midway USA, just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors. And we are coming to you from Dragon House Studios, the secret hidden bunker in the Rocky Mountains, where I have spent days digging this out. We had a spectacular snowstorm, 4 feet of snow, 3/4 feet of snow, 5-foot drifts. Springtime in the Rockies, what can you say? What I want to talk about today, though, is a gun that I am tremendously impressed by. This is the new Ruger MAX-9. In essence, it is Ruger's entry into the little bitty larger capacity 9mm carry guns. And we're going to talk about those a little bit later as to how we got here. But I wanted to kind of take you through this gun. Again, Ruger has been very closed-mouth on this. But what you have, I think, is an amazingly well-designed little gun. Couple of points I want to start out with. It's got a 3.2-inch barrel, weighs 18.4 ounces, which is pretty much baseline for all of these small 9mm. Striker fired, it has an excellent trigger, which I think you almost can see. It's a little take up before it hits that wall, but it's a very good trigger on a striker fired gun. The second thing I want to take you through, because I'm coming up from the bottom here. Once again, we talked about this last week on the panels on the Taurus G3C. These are good panels. The stippling on them is good. You've got obviously stippling, and stippling on the front. The reason I say it's good is it's sharp enough to hold your hand. When you put it in your hand and squeeze, you can tell that you've got a grip on the gun. However, it's not sharp enough to destroy your clothes. And I have a lot of clothes that have been destroyed by concealed carry. I have a chair that's been destroyed by concealed carry. What can you say? But it's got the right amount of grip for you. And then as we come up, you can see the relationship between this gun and Ruger's earlier little 9mm. This is an LC9S, their first striker version of the LC9. And it is, on its own, an excellent gun, and it has trigger safety, which this gun, the MAX-9, does not. This gun is a single-stack gun, 7+1 rounds. When we get to the MAX-9, it is 10+1, 12+1. You can get 12 rounds plus 1 in the chamber. You also have 10-round magazines if that's the necessity for you living in a slave state. But that puts it on par with all the other little high-capacity 9mm, which now includes the Springfield Armory Hellcat, the new Shield, the Smith & Wesson Shield Plus, which is a little bit fatter, and the granddaddy that triggered this whole run toward larger capacity, small 9mm, the Sig Sauer 365, the gun that I carry day in, day out. The Ruger engineers, though, they wanted best of class. I talked to the guys about this. And what is best of class? Well, I've already said you've got a good trigger, right? So what's next? What about those sights? Well, this gun, the MAX-9, comes with a plate that you can take the plate off and put your optic right on. It's drilled for JP mount, Shield, Shield, the British company that makes sights. That's what this is. This is a Shield RMS-C on it. Also, it would take the Sig Sauer Zero, Romeo Zero that you see on the 365, that you see, hey, on my 365. So you've got this sight system. Secondly, look at the backup sights. Now, this is kind of important to me, is you can see this backup sight is a little higher, and you've got a front sight that is both fiber optic and tritium, so it is a night sight. So basically what you have is a co-witness. With the Shield sight that's on it, with the Romeo Zero, you have a co-witness perfect setup with it. You don't have to change the sights. You don't have to do any dancing around on that. I like that because I do feel on a self-defense gun you need some kind of co-witness. With the 365, you're going to see a co-witness actually on the sight itself, on this SIG 0, a little tunnel there. But you need to be able to see your sights. And what Ruger did is they gave you a gun that's easy to hold on to, has excellent sights, has a really good trigger, and 10+1 or 12+1 rounds. As I said, 18.4. I'm not going to lie to you. Little 9mm kick. It has to do with this whole thing called physics, and there's no really way you can get around that. Take a look at the trigger guard. A little bit larger, easier for big hands or for gloved hands. Front serrations to help you cock the gun, and they're very deep. They're very good. All in all, you look at this gun and you say, wow, that's pretty cool. I wonder how we got here. We'll talk about that when we get back.
Years of laziness led to this very moment. Looks like Stan's gonna need some help. Let's get some organization in here. Some lighting, some security, some monitoring.
That does look nice.
Imagine that! There's more room in an organized vault. Keep your valuables organized, safe, and secure with Lockdown. Secure your lifestyle.
Welcome back to Triggered, where today we're talking about the really super little Ruger MAX-9. Essentially Ruger's entry into the little bitty larger capacity 9mm market. And it's really kind of interesting how we got here. I tend to think about concealed carry as, different generations. And the first really big generation of concealed carry in the United States started in 1986. That's when Florida approved shall issue. And I'm very proud to say that I'm the co-author of the very first concealed carry training program accepted by the state of Florida at that point. But as shall issue concealed carry spread, the focus was on either one, carrying big guns. If you were around during that period of 86 to 95, you heard people say you ought to be able to carry a full-size 1911 or Volkswagen, whichever comes first. Full-size Browning high power, great big Smith & Wesson, Model 39, Model 59. And then there was a little bit of move of like, can we cut those down? Can we cut down a 1911? Can we cut down a Smith & Wesson DA-SA? And you saw custom guns fitting into that concealed carry point. To me, the next generation of concealed carry begins in 1995. That's a critical date because three things happened there. Number one, Justin Moon, who couldn't find a concealed carry gun that he liked, started Car Arms and introduced the K9, which was the first truly dedicated concealed carry gun. At the same time, Glock rolled out their Model 26, little stubby, little fat, 10+1, 9mm. And finally, George Kellgren at Kel-Tec, and as I mentioned before, George Kellgren is always ahead. George Kellgren rolled out, I think it was the P11 was what it was called. It was called P11 because it had 10+1 rounds in the magazine. It was small, it was super light. So those three guns began defining what's concealed carry. And essentially they rolled on for a long time. I think until, if I was going to put a pin in the dates, when Ruger rolled out the LCP, the little 308, little 380, I wish it was the 308, little 380 in roughly 2008, that gun was such a stunning success that within a couple of years, essentially all the gun manufacturers started thinking, hey, wait a minute. People already got little 380s. I wonder if they'll buy little 9mm. And so you started to see new little 9mm. You saw the Glock 43. You saw the Smith & Wesson Shield. You saw the Kimber Solo. You saw Car getting smaller. This is a Car PM9, by the way, which I would class as one of the greatest concealed carry guns ever made. You saw Ruger with their LC series, first with a hammer-fired gun, their LC9, and then with their striker-fired gun, the LC9 here. And you saw, oddly enough, Kel-Tec focusing on narrow. So they went from their P11 10+1 to the PF9, which is their current offering, which is a 7-round in the magazine, 7+1. And you can see all these guns, when you start looking at them, really all fall into real similar categories. So what happened? Well, this happened. SIG 365 disrupted the market. A lot of people say I have a product that is disrupting the market. Well, the SIG 365 disrupted the market. And actually this one is a CO2 SIG 365, which is an exact duplicate of it. It shoots BBs. The reason that obviously the SIG changed everything was this magazine. And the magazine in the 365 was 10+1. All of a sudden, that became the baseline because the single stack 9mm were 5+1, 6+1, 7+1. All of them fell roughly in that range. But once the SIG 365 came out, and within a month became the best-selling gun in the United States with 10+1, and then they had a 12-round magazine +1, and then they almost immediately introduced 15+1. And of course, the slightly larger cousin, SIG 365 XL, a little bit longer slide, a little bit bigger grip, longer grip frame. So everybody had to respond. Everybody had to respond. And boy, have they ever. Ruger, 10+1 on the MAX-9. I have a cheat sheet right over here. Springfield Armory Hellcat, 11+1, 13+1 also available. The new, introduced this week, I can't wait to get my hands on one. I've shot the regular Shield, but now there's the chubby little Shield Plus, which has 10+1, 13+1 rounds. The Ruger here, you also got the Taurus we looked at last week, 10+1, 12+1, plus the ability to use 226 magazines. So all in all, you now have a very large market to choose from in terms of mini 9mm. And from from just a philosophical standpoint, does it matter if your gun is 6+1, 7+1, 10+1, 13+1, 15+1? I actually don't think so. Assuming, and this is a big assumption, assuming you carry an extra magazine with you. The Ruger comes with 2. The Taurus, as we said last week, comes with 3. Most all these guns come with 2 magazines. So you tell me, is there such amount of difference between 7+1 and 10+1? That's something you're going to have to decide. We've got more when Triggered returns. This week's Triggered is brought to you by Midway USA. Just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors. Taurus USA, designed to protect. Rock Island Arms Corps, solid as a rock. Volquartsen, engineering the world's finest rimfire rifles, pistols, and parts. And Franklin Armory, making some of the most innovative guns in America. Welcome back to Triggered, where we're talking about lots of little bitty 9mm, right? There is one trend, though, that is absolutely unstoppable, and that is the trend you can see here toward optics. That is a critical point because I think, we're almost there now, where optics becomes a necessity. At least the option of optics becomes a necessity. For example, when SIG rolled out the 365, you still had to have the frame milled off, which is about a $150 trick. Done it a bunch. But when they came out with the XL also had a plate and was drilled to take specific optics. Same thing, Hellcat came out, has to be optics ready because that's what the market demands right now. And the market doesn't want to pay X for a gun and X for a red dot sight and then X for milling the slide to allow the sight to fit on it. They don't want to do that. And then you got to add an extra set of sights. It runs up. It runs up very quickly. And I think manufacturers are now to the point where they realize that you must be able to put dots on the gun. That was kind of the drawback if you look at some of the earlier single stacks, because oddly enough, and I was one of the people driving this, I like thin guns. Ta-da! To me, the baseline thin gun was Colt 1903, 1908, 32, 380. I think it was 3/4 of an inch wide. And I thought, wow, I really like 3/4 of an inch wide. Well, the Ruger LC9 was close. The Keltec PF9 was even closer. I think this is essentially slightly less in fat here, in width, than the 1903, 1908 Colt. I think it's less than 3/4 of an inch here. It is a very slim gun. However, when we start talking about the necessity of optics, it's going to change the top of the slide. Round, not good. You got a mill. You can see the same thing in the predecessor to the MAX-9, the LC-9, because once again, you've got an almost rounded top. So it would be relatively hard to mill and fit a sight to it. The more typical way is what you can see here with the 365 and the MAX-9 is slide B flat. That makes it the easiest to put a sight on it, is that slightly wider top. And the optics world has changed pretty drastically. That's one of the reasons that I think it's so important. Previously, if you wanted to put a dot on a mini 9mm, whether it's single stack or the 365 or any of the double stack guns, you're going to have a bit hanging over. Like Trijicon RMR is designed essentially for roughly the top of a Glock slide, full-size Glock G19, G17. And so when you put them on the narrower slide, they stick out a little bit on the side. So it's like, I don't think it really makes much difference, but it doesn't look as cool. So with the prevalence of the single stack little 9s and now the small double stack 9s, the dot manufacturers are responding. Trijicon, of course, came out with their RMR CC, which does not use a standard dot pattern. If you're going to use a Trijicon RMR CC, make sure that the gun you buy has a plate that will accommodate that, or you're going to have to do something to mount it. I mentioned the shield. Shield has been around forever, and it's been imported into the United States under half a dozen different names. And so it's a landmark manufacturer, and they were very quick to come out with their RMSC, their compact size, which is essentially size for the top of a Glock 43, which is roughly the size of pretty much all these guns on the table. Then SIG very aggressively going forward into the red dot world. You know, this SIG Zero, which is on my own gun, is not only a really nice sight, I really like it, it's a really nice sight that you can buy tomorrow afternoon for $199. The thing with the red dot optics was, up until really recently, you paid as much for the optic as you paid for the gun. And, you know, RMR, roughly $500. The new Delta Point Pro, Leupold Delta Point Pro in the $500 range. SIG Max, $500 range. So, when you start looking at the little sights, those little sights will fit on these little frames. Holosun also has, I think, one of the 407 and 507C, or maybe K, that is the smaller sight to fit on here. Crimson Trace, in another month, will be introducing their version of a small sight, which I almost think is a Glock 43 standard. I like this gun a lot. I like it. It's got 2 magazines. One has a pinky thing on it. So the key thing on these little guns is Mr. Pinky oftentimes is ignored. Well, Mr. Pinky there, or for the maximum concealed carry, there. The 2 magazines available. Everything about this gun is thoughtful. And to me, that's an important thing, which is I see typically with Ruger. Ruger tends to be thoughtful. They look at things and say, okay, how do we need to be here? So what does the future hold? I don't know. I would expect that sooner or later Glock has to respond, because the Glock 43 is a 6.1, 7.1 gun and a proprietary magazine, whereas the Glock 43X is a larger gun, more BBs, but a larger gun. I would not be surprised to see Kel-Tec roll out some sort of double stack small 9mm. After all, George Kellgren kind of invented them. And I think when I look at something like Car Arms, which now has an extensive line of small 9s and small 40s or 45s if you want them, they really need to go to some sort of top optic here. This is the PM9. It's the smallest of the full-size, smallest 9mm in the line, one of the best carry guns made, but it's not available for an optic. You want an optic, you got to have it custom cut. And having custom cut a car, it's actually harder than you'd think. So anyway, Ruger MAX-9, here's the big deal. $499 MSRP. You can expect to see it a lot less. That's going to put it easily $100 on the street value, $100 less than either the Hellcat or the 365. That's a big deal, and Ruger hit that price point with an excellent package. So, I'm Michael Bain. This is, of course, Triggered. You can find us on michaelbain.tv, or you can find us on YouTube. If you do go to YouTube, please hit that red subscribe button, because every time you hit that, actually it dispenses a pellet in my office, kind of like training a rat. If you hit that button, I get a pellet, and I really like the pellets. Next week, we'll have a lot more. We'll be doing a lot more shooting too once the snow melts. Only thing I was able to shoot with this gun was a snowman. We are brought to you by Midway USA, just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors, and we'll see you next week.